Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship had been traveling through the Kepler 442 system for 3 days now, mapping planets and looking for signs of life. It was routine work, the kind that human crews had been doing for over 200 years. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors," said Dr. Lisa Walsh from her science station. She was a tall woman with short brown hair who had spent most of her career studying alien worlds. "There's a massive object about 2 million kilometers away. It's artificial." Morrison walked over to her station. At 45 years old, he had been exploring space for 20 years and had never seen anything like what appeared on the screen. The object was huge, easily 5 times the size of any human ship ever built. Its design was unlike anything in human databases. "Commander Carter, what do you make of it?" Morrison asked his tactical officer. Ryan Carter, a former military academy graduate, studied the readings carefully. "It's definitely a ship, Captain. And it's powerful. I'm reading energy signatures that are off the charts. Whatever built this thing has technology we've never seen before." Amy Brooks, the communications officer, looked up from her station with excitement. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission. It's on multiple frequencies, and it's directed at us." Morrison felt his heart rate increase. This was it. After centuries of searching, humanity had finally made contact with another intelligent species. "Put it on screen, Amy." The view screen flickered and changed. Instead of stars, they now saw the interior of what looked like a massive command center. Standing in the center was a creature unlike anything they had ever imagined. It was tall, almost 8 feet, with gray skin that looked like stone. Its eyes glowed red, and sharp teeth filled its mouth. When it spoke, its voice was deep and harsh. "I am War Marshal Kethtar of the Zephyrian Empire. You are in our territory. State your purpose or be destroyed." Morrison straightened his uniform and stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth vessel USS Defiance. We come in peace. We're explorers, seeking to learn about the galaxy and make contact with other civilizations." Kethtar's red eyes narrowed. "Peace?" The word seemed to disgust him. "You speak of peace like it means something. In this galaxy, only the strong survive. The weak serve or die. Which are you, humans?" Dr. Walsh moved closer to Morrison. "Captain, perhaps we should explain our civilization. They might understand if we tell them about Earth and our colonies." Morrison nodded. "War Marshal Kethtar, humanity controls several dozen star systems. We've built a peaceful alliance based on cooperation and trade. We don't seek conflict with anyone. Perhaps our peoples could benefit from working together." The alien leader threw back his head and laughed. It was a terrible sound that made the human crew uncomfortable. "Cooperation? You mean you've never conquered anyone? You've never taken worlds by force? How have you survived this long?" Quote, "We don't believe in conquest," Morrison explained. "We explore, we settle empty worlds, and we help other species when we can. Violence is something we try to avoid." Kethtar's expression changed from amusement to contempt. "Then you are weak, and the weak exist only to serve the strong. I will give you one chance. Captain Morrison, surrender your ship and your people. Become slaves of the Zephyrian Empire. Serve us, and you might live." Carter stepped forward angrily. "Captain, we can't let him talk to us like this. These creatures think they can just—" Morrison held up a hand to stop him. "War Marshal, we cannot accept your terms. We're a free people, but we don't want war either. Surely we can find some middle ground." "There is no middle ground," Kethtar snarled. "You will learn what happens to those who refuse the Empire's generosity." He gestured to someone off-screen. "Bring them in." The screen split, showing another part of the alien ship. 3 humans in diplomatic uniforms were dragged into view by Zephyrian soldiers. Morrison recognized them immediately. They were part of the diplomatic mission that had been sent to the outer colonies last month. Captain Morrison called one of the prisoners, a woman named Janet Pierce. "Don't believe anything they tell you. They attacked our ship without warning. They're killers." Kethtar smiled, showing his razor-sharp teeth. "These three were found in our space 2 weeks ago. They spoke the same words you do now. Peace, cooperation, weakness." He drew a large weapon from his belt. "Let me show you what the Empire does with weakness." "Wait," Morrison shouted, but it was too late. The weapon fired 3 times. The human diplomats fell to the floor and didn't get up. The alien soldiers dragged their bodies away like they were garbage. Amy Brooks gasped and covered her mouth. Dr. Walsh stared at the screen in shock. Carter's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Morrison grabbed his wrist. Kethtar holstered his weapon and looked directly at Morrison. "Now you understand. The Zephyrian Empire has conquered 17 civilizations across 3 star systems. We are the rulers of this part of the galaxy. And you, humans, are about to become our 18th conquest." The War Marshal walked closer to his own screen. "I know about your colony world. New Terra, isn't it? 2.5 million of your people live there. Here are my terms. You have 72 hours to evacuate that world and surrender it to the Empire. If you refuse, we will burn it from orbit. Every man, woman, and child will die." Morrison tried to keep his voice steady. "You can't be serious. Those are innocent people. Families, children, innocent?" Kethtar laughed again. "They are humans. They are weak. If they die, it will be because you chose pride over their lives. 72 hours, Captain. Then we will show the galaxy what happens to those who refuse the Empire." The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Carter was the first to speak. "Captain, we have to warn Earth. We have to prepare the fleet." "What fleet?" Dr. Walsh asked quietly. "We haven't fought a war in over 2 centuries. Our ships aren't built for combat. Amy Brooks turned from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships moving toward us. Big ones." Morrison looked at the tactical display. 12 massive Zephyrian vessels were approaching at high speed. "All hands, prepare for emergency jump to faster than light speed. Set course for Earth. Maximum speed." As the USS Defiance jumped into hyperspace, its hull damaged by weapons fire from the alien ships, Morrison realized that everything had changed. Humanity was about to face its first war in generations, and they had no idea what they were up against. The peaceful age of exploration was over. The age of survival had begun. The emergency session of the United Earth Council began at midnight, Earth Standard Time. President Helen Carter sat at the head of the oval table, her face grave as she looked at the dozen leaders gathered around her. The holographic displays showed real-time data from across human space, and none of it was good. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're facing the greatest crisis in human history," President Carter began. "As you've all seen from the transmission, an alien empire has given us 72 hours to surrender the New Terra colony. If we refuse, they'll destroy it." Defense Minister Paul Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably in his chair. For the past 15 years, his job had been mostly ceremonial. Human space was peaceful. The biggest threats his department faced were asteroid strikes and equipment failures. "Madam President, our current military consists of exploration vessels and cargo ships. We have some defensive weapons, but nothing designed for actual warfare." Admiral Katie Sullivan, head of Earth's Stellar Defense Force, pulled up tactical displays on her tablet. "I've been reviewing our assets. We have 47 ships that could potentially be used in combat. Most are exploration vessels with basic shields and mining lasers. We have maybe a dozen ships with actual weapon systems, but they're designed for asteroid defense, not ship-to-ship combat." Dr. Gregory Adams, Earth's leading expert on alien life, had been studying the transmission recordings since they arrived. I've analyzed everything we know about these Zephyrians. They're clearly a warrior culture. Their technology appears superior to ours, at least in terms of weapons and armor. But there's something interesting about their psychology. President Carter leaned forward. What do you mean? They expect immediate surrender or total resistance. Look at how their leader reacted when Captain Morrison tried to negotiate. He couldn't understand the concept of compromise. This suggests they've never fought an enemy that adapted their tactics during a conflict. Rodriguez frowned. What good does that do us? We still don't have the ships or weapons to fight them. Maybe we don't need traditional weapons, came a new voice. Everyone turned to look at the large screen where AEG's, humanity's most advanced artificial intelligence, had appeared. The AI looked like a shifting pattern of light and data. I've been accessing historical military databases from before the peace accords. Humans fought wars for thousands of years before achieving galactic unity. The tactical knowledge still exists. Admiral Sullivan sat up straighter. You're talking about going back to our wartime roots? Aegis. Most of that information is classified or archived, and those tactics were for fighting other humans, not aliens with superior technology. Superior individual technology, yes, AEGs replied. But look at their approach. They sent one ship to deliver an ultimatum. They expect compliance or a conventional military response. They're not prepared for asymmetric warfare. Meanwhile, on New Terra, Colonial Governor Ben Foster was dealing with the practical reality of the crisis. His office was filled with colonial department heads, all talking at once about evacuation procedures, defensive positions, and civilian safety. Quiet! Foster shouted, and the room fell silent. At 58, he had been governor for 10 years and had dealt with everything from crop failures to equipment shortages. But this was different. Chief Kim, what are our defensive capabilities? Lisa Kim, head of colonial security, consulted her tablet. We have basic planetary defense guns designed to deal with asteroids and space debris. Our security force has about 3,000 people, but they're trained for peacekeeping, not warfare. We have mining equipment that could potentially be weaponized. And our industrial fabricators could produce basic weapons if we had designs. Foster nodded grimly. What about evacuation? Impossible, said Transportation Chief Danny Walsh. We have maybe 50 ships capable of interstellar travel, and most of those are cargo vessels. To evacuate 2.5 million people, we'd need at least 500 ships and several months. We have 72 hours. Dr. Adams joined the conversation via hologram from Earth. Governor Foster, I don't think complete evacuation is the answer anyway. If we run, they'll just follow us to the next world. We need to make them understand that conquering humanity won't be as easy as they think. Back on Earth, President Carter was making the hardest decision of her career. Defense Minister Rodriguez, I'm authorizing you to activate the emergency defense protocols. I want our industrial facilities converted to weapons production immediately. Madam President, Rodriguez said carefully. You're talking about preparing for war. Are you certain this is the path we want to take? Carter looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. These aliens murdered our diplomats in cold blood. They're threatening to burn an entire world. What choice do we have? AEGIS spoke up again. I've been analyzing human military history. The most successful human armies weren't always the ones with the best equipment. They were the ones that could adapt quickly and think creatively. The Zephyrians have conquered 17 civilizations. I suspect those civilizations all tried to fight them the same way. Admiral Sullivan was already making notes. What are you suggesting? Every species they've conquered was either technologically inferior or surrendered quickly. They've never faced an enemy that could match their adaptability. Humans survived on Earth for millennia because we could change our tactics faster than our enemies could adapt to them. Dr. Adams nodded enthusiastically. That's exactly what I was thinking. Look at their ship design. It's built for intimidation and frontal assault. They're expecting us to meet them in conventional ship-to-ship combat. What if we don't? Governor Foster had been listening to the conversation from New Terra. Dr. Adams, what exactly are you proposing? We make them fight a type of war they've never seen before. We use our civilian infrastructure as weapons. We turn our weakness into strength. We make them fight not just our military, but our entire civilization. President Carter felt a chill run down her spine. She was talking about turning humanity's peaceful society into something it hadn't been for over 2 centuries. Are we really prepared to become a warrior species again? Admiral Sullivan stood up. Madam President, we never stopped being warriors. We just learned to fight different battles. For 200 years, we've fought hostile environments, equipment failures, and natural disasters. We've learned to solve impossible problems with limited resources. Those are exactly the skills we need now. Aegis began displaying tactical scenarios on the main screen. I've run thousands of simulations. In conventional warfare, we lose. But if we fight unconventionally, using tactics the Zephyrians have never encountered, our odds improve significantly. Rodriguez was studying the data. You're talking about turning our entire civilization into a military force, using civilian ships as weapons platforms, converting industrial equipment into weapons, using our own infrastructure as a battlefield advantage. Exactly, Dr. Adams said. The Zephyrians see us as weak because we're peaceful. They don't understand that peace and weakness are not the same thing. We chose peace because we're strong enough to choose it. Now we're choosing war. Governor Foster made his decision first. I'm not evacuating New Terra. We're going to fight. And we're going to show these aliens what happens when they threaten human families. President Carter looked around the table one more time. Every face showed the same determination. Then it's decided. We fight. Admiral Sullivan, you have full authority to prepare our defense. Dr. Adams, I want you working with AEGs to develop new tactical approaches. Governor Foster, hold your ground. Help is coming. As the meeting ended and the leaders dispersed to their duties, President Carter remained seated for a moment. In the space of a few hours, she had transformed humanity from a peaceful alliance of explorers into something else entirely. She just hoped they remembered how to be warriors when the time came. Across human space, the word went out. Factories stopped producing consumer goods and started making weapons. Exploration ships were retrofitted with armor and guns. Mining stations became fortress bases. Humanity was waking up from 2 centuries of peace. The Zephyrians had wanted to see what humans would become when threatened with extinction. They were about to find out. The countdown timer on Governor Ben Foster's desk showed 18 hours remaining. Outside his office windows, New Terra's 3 moons hung in the purple sky, peaceful and beautiful. It was hard to believe that in less than a day, alien warships might turn this world into burning ash. Foster stood in the emergency command center that had been set up in the planet's main industrial complex. Around him, dozens of people worked frantically at computer stations, coordinating what appeared to be a massive evacuation. But appearances could be deceiving. Chief Kim, what's the status on Operation False Dawn? Foster asked. Lisa Kim looked up from her tactical display. 90% of the civilian population has been relocated to the underground mining complexes. From orbit, it'll look like they've evacuated completely. Meanwhile, we've got 3,000 volunteers staying topside to run the show. Danny Walsh, the chief engineer who had arrived from Earth the day before, was coordinating with his sister doctor, Lisa Walsh, via hologram. The mining charges have been repositioned around all major landing zones. If they try to land troops, they're going to get a very unpleasant surprise. Foster nodded approvingly. What about the orbital stations? That's where things get interesting, Danny said. pulling up a 3D display of the space around New Terra. "We've got 12 mining platforms and 6 communication satellites. They all look like civilian infrastructure. But we've been making some modifications." He highlighted one of the mining platforms. Platform 7 was designed to crack asteroids into manageable chunks. "We've recalibrated its mining laser to fire in concentrated bursts instead of steady beams. It won't look like a weapon until it starts shooting." Meanwhile, in deep space, Commodore Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, no longer the exploration vessel, USS Defiance, but now the command ship of humanity's hastily assembled fleet. Around him, 43 ships moved in loose formation toward New Terra. None of them looked like traditional warships. "Commodore, we're receiving a transmission from the Freedom's Call," reported Communications Officer Amy Brooks, who had been promoted and transferred to Morrison's command staff. The main screen showed Captain Sandra Lopez, a cargo ship pilot who had volunteered to retrofit her vessel for combat. Behind her, Morrison could see her crew working frantically with equipment that definitely hadn't come from any military manual. "Commodore Morrison, we've finished installing the new weapon systems," Lopez reported. "Danny Walsh's team did amazing work. We've got 36 missile tubes made from cargo launching systems, and each missile is built around an asteroid mining charge. They pack enough punch to crack a small moon." Act 2. Act 2. Morrison smiled grimly. "And the Zephyrians will never see them coming until you fire. How's the Discovery Bay coming along?" "Notice. End of that. Notice-ibo. Notice-ibo. End-ibo." Another screen activated, showing Captain Neil Johnson aboard what had once been a deep space research vessel. "Our electronic warfare suite is operational, Commodore. We've turned our entire sensor array into a jamming system. When the aliens arrive, they're going to find their communications and targeting systems very confused." Dr. Lisa Walsh, now serving as the fleet's science coordinator, had been studying everything humanity knew about Zephyrian technology. "Commodore, I've been analyzing the sensor data from your encounter with their war marshal. Their ships are heavily armored and well-armed, but they seem to rely heavily on energy shields and direct-fire weapons." "Which means," Morrison asked, "which means they're probably not expecting physical projectile attacks or coordinated electronic interference. Their shields are designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid objects traveling at high velocity." Commander Ryan Carter, now serving as Morrison's tactical coordinator, was reviewing the battle plans. "It's crazy enough that it might work, Commodore. We hit them with everything at once. Electronic warfare to confuse their targeting, physical projectiles to overwhelm their shields, and coordinated ramming attacks to disrupt their formations." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. "Ramming attacks, Commander." "Sir, some of our captains have volunteered for suicide runs if necessary. Captain Rodriguez, on the Earth's Pride, has already stripped his ship down to minimum crew and loaded it with explosives. If we can't win conventionally, we can at least make them pay a heavy price for their victory." The idea of sending brave volunteers to certain death made Morrison sick, but he understood the logic. Humanity was facing extinction. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Back on New Terra, the Zephyrian fleet appeared on long-range sensors exactly on schedule. Governor Foster watched the tactical display as 12 massive alien warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. "They're just sitting there," observed Chief Kim. "What are they waiting for?" Danny Walsh checked his instruments. "They're scanning the planet. Probably trying to figure out if we've evacuated or not." Foster activated the planetary communication system. "This is Governor Ben Foster of New Terra. I'm transmitting our surrender and the coordinates for our remaining population centers. Please don't hurt the civilians who couldn't be evacuated in time. It was a complete lie, of course." The coordinates led to empty buildings and abandoned structures. But the Zephyrians didn't know that. War Marshal Kethtar's voice came through the speakers, filled with contempt. "Pathetic. You humans truly are weak. We will occupy your world and add your people to our slave population. Prepare for landing." 6 of the 12 alien ships began moving toward New Terra's surface. The other 6 remained in orbit, probably to prevent any escaping ships. Foster smiled. The aliens were doing exactly what humanity had hoped they would do. "Danny, activate the mining platforms," Foster ordered. In space around New Terra, 12 orbital mining stations that had been peacefully extracting minerals from asteroids for decades suddenly revealed their new purpose. Powerful lasers that had been designed to cut through solid rock focused on the approaching Zephyrian ships. The first alien vessel took 3 direct hits before its crew realized they were under attack. By then, it was too late. The mining lasers punched through the ship's armor and caused massive internal explosions. "Impossible!" Kethtar's voice roared through the communication system. "Those are civilian mining platforms." Governor Foster activated his communicator. "War Marshal, you wanted to see what humans become when you threaten our families. Now you know. We become whatever we need to become." The space battle that followed was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever experienced. Morrison's fleet arrived in the middle of the chaos and immediately began implementing tactics that made no sense to a traditional military mind. Captain Lopez's cargo ship fired a barrage of mining charge missiles that completely overwhelmed the shields of one Zephyrian vessel. Captain Johnson's electronic warfare ship jammed the alien communications so effectively that 3 enemy ships accidentally fired on each other. But the moment that would become legend happened when Captain Rodriguez piloted the Earth's Pride directly into the side of the Zephyrian flagship. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface and took out 2 alien ships. War Marshal Kethtar, aboard one of the remaining vessels, found himself facing an enemy that fought with tactics he had never encountered. Human ships attacked in coordinated swarms, using their smaller size and superior maneuverability to stay inside the firing arcs of the larger alien vessels. "They fight like insects," he snarled to his bridge crew. "No honor, no courage, just swarming and stinging." His tactical officer, a scarred veteran of dozens of campaigns, looked troubled. "War Marshal, we've lost 7 ships. That's more than we lost conquering the entire vegan system." "Then we destroy them all," Kethtar roared. "Fire everything. Turn this system to ash." But when the Zephyrian ships tried to target New Terra's surface, they found that the mining platforms were still operational, now supported by ground-based defense systems that had been cleverly disguised as industrial equipment. The planet's weather control system created massive electromagnetic storms that interfered with alien sensors. After 6 hours of battle, Kethtar was forced to retreat. He had lost 8 of his 12 ships, and the human colony was still very much alive and fighting. As the surviving Zephyrian vessels limped away from New Terra, Foster received a communication from Commodore Morrison. "Governor, that was the most insane battle plan I've ever seen." Foster looked out at the debris field that had once been alien warships. "Commodore, I think we just taught the Zephyrian Empire a very important lesson." "What's that?" "Never underestimate a species that's willing to turn their entire civilization into a weapon." 6 months after the Battle of New Terra, the war had spread across 4 star systems. What had started as a simple conquest for the Zephyrian Empire had become a grinding nightmare that grew worse with each passing week. Admiral Katie Sullivan stood in the command center of the mobile battle station Endurance, watching tactical displays that showed the current state of the conflict. The ship itself was a marvel of human adaptation, built from 3 cargo vessels welded together and equipped with weapons that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from the Phantom Network," announced Lieutenant Tony Garcia, the intelligence coordinator. "Captain Brooks has successfully disrupted another Zephyrian supply convoy in the Kepler system." Quote, Sullivan smiled. The Phantom Network was Amy Brooks' creation, a fleet of small, fast ships that specialized in hit-and-run attacks. They had turned the Zephyrian supply lines into a constant source of anxiety for the alien commanders. "How many ships did we lose this time?" Sullivan asked. "None, Admiral." Captain Brooks used the new stealth technology to attack from inside an asteroid field. The Zephyrians never saw them coming. The stealth technology was another example of human innovation under pressure. By studying captured Zephyrian sensors, human engineers had learned to coat their ships with materials that absorbed alien scanner beams. It wasn't perfect invisibility, but it was close enough. On the planet Kepler 442c, which humans had nicknamed Hope, Colonel Eric Hayes crouched in an underground tunnel system that stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath the surface. Above him, Zephyrian forces controlled the planet's main cities and industrial centers. Below ground, humanity had built a hidden world. Colonel, the supply run from Tunnel Complex 7 was successful, reported Sergeant Maria Santos, emerging from a side passage covered in dirt and carrying a plasma rifle taken from a dead alien soldier. We've captured enough Zephyrian equipment to arm another 50 resistance fighters. Hayes nodded approvingly. The underground war on Hope had been going on for 4 months, and the aliens still didn't understand what they were fighting. Every time they thought they had cleared out human resistance, more fighters appeared from tunnels they didn't know existed. "What's the status on Operation Mole?" Hayes asked. Santos grinned. "The mining charges are in place under their main ammunition depot. When you give the signal, their entire base is going to disappear into a very large hole." This was the kind of warfare the Zephyrians had never encountered. They were used to conquering civilizations that fought pitched battles with armies and fleets. They didn't know how to deal with an enemy that treated every civilian as a potential soldier and every piece of infrastructure as a potential weapon. Back in space, the war had produced something entirely new. Human ships that combined alien technology with human tactical thinking. The USS Retribution, commanded by Captain Ryan Carter, was the first of these hybrid vessels. "Captain, we've got 3 Zephyrian destroyers approaching from the port side," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sam Parker. Carter studied the enemy formation on his tactical display. "They're trying to box us in against that asteroid field. Standard Zephyrian tactic. Let's show them why that's a bad idea when fighting humans." The Retribution was built around the hull of a captured Zephyrian vessel, but its weapons and systems had been completely redesigned by human engineers. Instead of the heavy, direct-fire weapons the aliens preferred, it carried dozens of smaller, more flexible systems. "Launch hunter-killer drones," Carter ordered. "Target their engine systems, not their hulls." 50 small drones swarmed out of the Retribution's launch bays, each one equipped with high explosives and basic artificial intelligence. The Zephyrians tried to shoot them down, but the drones were too small and too numerous. When the drones reached their targets, they didn't try to destroy the alien ships. Instead, they attached themselves to critical systems and began sending out jamming signals that interfered with Zephyrian weapons and navigation. "Sir, the lead destroyer is dead in space," Parker reported. "The other 2 are trying to retreat, but their navigation systems are completely scrambled. Disable them and take prisoners," Carter ordered. "Dr. Adams wants to study more Zephyrian technology." Dr. Gregory Adams had become humanity's leading expert on alien biology and technology. Working from a secret research facility hidden inside an asteroid, he had made discoveries that were transforming the war. "The key to understanding the Zephyrians is their psychology," Adams explained to Admiral Sullivan during their weekly briefing. "They're not just a warrior culture. They're a culture that cannot conceive of any approach to conflict except total domination or total submission." Sullivan leaned forward with interest. "Explain. Every civilization they've conquered either surrendered immediately or fought a conventional war and lost. They've never encountered an enemy that could adapt and change tactics faster than they could respond. It's not just that we're winning some battles, it's that we're fighting in ways their minds literally cannot process." Adams pulled up a holographic display showing captured alien communications. "Look at these intercepted transmissions. They're not angry about our tactics. They're confused. Their commanders are requesting reinforcements not because they're losing, but because they don't understand what they're fighting." This psychological advantage was being exploited across human space. On Earth, the AI collective led by AEGIS had become the central coordinator for human military strategy. Admiral Sullivan, I've been analyzing Zephyrian response patterns, AEGs reported during a strategy meeting. Their military doctrine is based on overwhelming force applied directly. When we attack their supply lines instead of their main fleets, it takes them an average of 3 weeks to adapt their strategy. By then, we've already moved on to a different approach. President Helen Carter, attending the meeting from Earth, looked tired, but determined. "What's our overall strategic position?" "Better than anyone expected," Sullivan replied. "We're not winning in the traditional sense. We don't have the ships or firepower to defeat them in direct combat. But we're making their conquest of human space so expensive and complicated that they're starting to question whether it's worth the effort." This was exactly what humanity had hoped for. They couldn't match the Zephyrian Empire's raw military power, but they could make victory so costly that the aliens would eventually look for easier targets. The turning point came during the Battle of the Outer Rim, when a massive Zephyrian fleet attempted to capture the mining colony at Epsilon Eridani. The colony was defended by only a small human force, but what the aliens found there changed the nature of the war forever. Commodore Jake Morrison, now commanding a fleet of 30 hybrid vessels, had prepared a surprise that would become legendary among human military historians. "War Marshal Kethtar, this is Commodore Morrison. I believe you remember me from our first meeting." On the main screen, Morrison could see the alien commander's rage-filled face. Kethtar had personally requested to lead this attack, hoping to finally crush the humans who had humiliated him at New Terra. "I remember you, human. Today you will pay for your insolence. Prepare to die." "Actually," Morrison replied calmly, "today, you're going to learn why human beings survived for millions of years on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them." Morrison's fleet was heavily outnumbered. But they weren't fighting alone. The mining colony had been turned into a massive trap. What looked like a simple industrial facility was actually a carefully designed killing ground. When the Zephyrian ships moved in to attack the colony, they found themselves caught in a crossfire between Morrison's mobile fleet and stationary weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment. But that was just the beginning. "Now," Morrison said quietly, and pressed a button. The space around the colony suddenly filled with thousands of small objects that had been hidden in fake asteroid fields. Each object was a mine, equipped with simple guidance systems and powerful explosives. The Zephyrian fleet, designed for fighting other starships, had no defense against a minefield that materialized around them without warning. In the space of 10 minutes, they lost half their ships. But the real shock came when the surviving Zephyrian vessels tried to retreat. The space around them began to warp and distort as hidden gravity generators created artificial gravity wells that prevented faster-than-light travel. "Impossible!" Kethtar roared. "You cannot have such technology." Morrison's voice was calm and professional. "War Marshal, we've been building artificial gravity systems for centuries. We just never thought to use them as weapons before. You taught us that." For the first time in his military career, Kethtar found himself completely trapped. His remaining ships were surrounded by an enemy that fought with tactics he couldn't understand, using weapons that shouldn't exist. The battle ended with the capture of the entire Zephyrian fleet. Not destroyed. Captured. The aliens had never encountered an enemy that tried to take prisoners rather than simply killing everyone. As Kethtar was transported to a human prison facility, he realized that he was no longer fighting the same species he had encountered 6 months ago. Humanity had become something new. Something dangerous. Something that learned. 2 years after first contact, the Zephyrian Empire faced something it had never encountered in its 3,000-year history. Defeat. Not just a military setback, but the complete collapse of everything they thought they knew about warfare and conquest. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance, humanity's first purpose-built warship. Unlike the converted cargo vessels and retrofitted exploration ships that had fought the early battles, this ship had been designed from the ground up as a weapon of war. But it was a uniquely human weapon. "Admiral, we're approaching the Zephyrian home system," reported Captain Sandra Lopez, who had been promoted from cargo ship pilot to fleet coordinator. Long-range sensors are detecting massive defensive formations around their homeworld. Morrison studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. The ship around him was a perfect example of what humanity had become during the war. It carried weapons systems copied from captured alien technology, but used them in ways no Zephyrian engineer had ever imagined. "Dr. Adams, what's the status on Operation Prometheus?" Morrison asked. Dr. Gregory Adams, now serving as the fleet's strategic advisor, consulted his tablet. "All systems are ready, Admiral. AEGIS has confirmed that our psychological warfare protocols are fully operational. Operation Prometheus was the culmination of 2 years of human adaptation and learning. It wasn't just a military campaign. It was a demonstration of what humanity had become, designed to end the war permanently." President Helen Carter's voice came through the communication system from Earth. "Admiral Morrison, you have authorization to proceed. The entire human alliance is behind you." Behind them wasn't just a fleet of warships. Following Morrison's battle group were hundreds of vessels carrying diplomats, scientists, engineers, and civilians from across human space. This wasn't an invasion. It was a migration. On the bridge of the Zephyrian command ship Eternal Dominion, War Marshal Kethtar stared at the approaching human fleet with something approaching panic. In the 2 years since his capture and prisoner exchange, he had watched his empire slowly crumble under human pressure. "How many ships?" he asked his tactical officer. "Over 800, War Marshal. But most of them aren't military vessels. We're detecting cargo ships, passenger transports, and industrial fabrication units." Kethtar's red eyes narrowed in confusion. "What kind of invasion force brings civilians and cargo ships?" The answer came when Admiral Morrison opened a communication channel to the entire Zephyrian home fleet. "War Marshal Kethtar, this is Admiral Morrison. We've met before. I'm here to offer the Zephyrian Empire a choice." On his screen, Morrison could see the alien commander's hatred and confusion. Behind Kethtar, the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship showed dozens of officers monitoring what appeared to be the largest human fleet ever assembled. "You dare approach our homeworld with threats, human? We have 600 warships defending this system. Your cargo ships and civilian vessels will burn." Morrison smiled calmly. "War Marshal, let me explain what you're looking at. Those cargo ships carry industrial fabrication units that can build a space station in 6 weeks. Those passenger transports contain 50,000 human civilians who volunteered to come here. And those ships you think are unarmed? Well, you should know by now that humans don't believe in unarmed ships." To demonstrate his point, Morrison gave a signal. Across the human fleet, ships that looked like simple cargo vessels suddenly revealed hidden weapon systems. Mining ships extended drilling platforms that had been converted into massive projectile launchers. Even passenger transports deployed defensive systems that could double as offensive weapons. "Every human ship is a potential warship," Morrison explained. "Every civilian is a potential soldier. Every piece of equipment is a potential weapon. That's what you taught us about ourselves." But the real demonstration was yet to come. Morrison activated a new system that humanity had spent 2 years developing, based on captured Zephyrian technology, but improved with human innovation. "War Marshal, meet humanity's newest allies." The space around the human fleet suddenly filled with additional ships. Ships that looked exactly like Zephyrian vessels, crewed by beings that appeared to be Zephyrian soldiers. Kethtar's face showed complete confusion. "What trickery is this?" "No trickery," Morrison replied. "These are ships crewed by Zephyrians, real ones, members of your own species who have joined humanity." It was true. During the 2-year conflict, thousands of Zephyrian prisoners and defectors had been exposed to human culture. They had learned about concepts like cooperation, individual choice, and peaceful coexistence. Many had chosen to abandon the empire and join humanity instead. Dr. Adams had spent months studying this phenomenon. "Admiral, The Zephyrian defectors report that their own species has been questioning the Empire's methods since our war began. Apparently, watching humans fight has made them reconsider their own approach to conflict. One of the defector ships moved forward, and its captain appeared on Morrison's screen alongside Kethtar. The rebel Zephyrian looked exactly like any other member of his species, except for the human uniform he wore. "War Marshal," the defector said in accented English. "I am Commander Veltar, formerly of the Zephyrian Third Fleet. I speak for 300 ships and 40,000 warriors who no longer serve the Empire." Kethtar stared at his former subordinate with shock and rage. "Traitor! You have betrayed your own species!" "No," Veltar replied calmly. "I have chosen a better path. The humans have shown us that strength does not require cruelty, that victory does not require slavery, that a civilization can be powerful without being evil." Morrison stepped forward again. "War Marshal, this is the choice I'm offering your empire. Join the growing alliance of free worlds. Learn to cooperate instead of conquer. Help us build something better than what either of our species could achieve alone." Kethtar's response was exactly what Morrison expected. "Never. The Zephyrian Empire will never bow to inferior species. We will fight to the last warrior." "That's unfortunate," Morrison said quietly. "But also, your choice to make. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries. The human fleet didn't attack the Zephyrian Home Defense Force. Instead, they simply dispersed throughout the system and began working. Cargo ships deployed industrial fabrication units that started building structures in space. Passenger transports landed on uninhabited worlds and established colonies. Mining ships began extracting resources from asteroids. In the space of 6 hours, humanity had established a permanent presence in the Zephyrian home system. "What are you doing?" Kethtar demanded. "We're building a civilization," Morrison explained. "Right here. We're going to show your people what's possible when you choose cooperation over conquest. Some of them will join us. Others will continue to support the Empire. But everyone will have a choice." It was psychological warfare on a scale never before attempted. Instead of trying to defeat the Zephyrian Empire militarily, humanity was offering an alternative. They were demonstrating that strength and success didn't require domination and violence. Over the following months, the strategy worked exactly as planned. Thousands of Zephyrians defected to the human alliance. Entire planets declared independence from the Empire and requested human protection. The Zephyrian military found itself fighting not just humans, but growing numbers of their own people. The final confrontation came when Emperor Zephkol himself, the supreme ruler of the Zephyrian Empire, requested a meeting with President Carter. The meeting took place aboard a neutral station that had been built specifically for the purpose. President Carter, now in her second term, sat across a table from an alien ruler whose empire was crumbling around him. "President Carter," the Emperor said in carefully learned English, "my generals tell me that we cannot win this war. Not because your military is stronger than ours, but because you fight with weapons we do not understand." Carter nodded respectfully. "Your empire has great strength, Your Majesty. But you've been using that strength to force others to submit. We've been using our strength to help others choose freely. And that is why you win? That's why everyone wins," Carter replied. "When people choose to work together instead of being forced to submit, everyone benefits. Your own people are discovering this. That's why so many of them have joined us." The Emperor was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. "What would you have us do? Surrender our empire? Abandon our traditions?" "Keep your traditions," Carter said. "Keep your strength. Keep your pride. But use them to build instead of to destroy. Use them to protect instead of to conquer. Use them to create instead of to dominate." The peace treaty that ended the war was unlike any document in galactic history. The Zephyrian Empire wasn't dissolved or conquered. Instead, it was transformed. It became a member of the growing alliance of free worlds, contributing its military strength to protecting smaller civilizations instead of conquering them. War Marshal Kethtar, in a ceremony that was broadcast across both human and Zephyrian space, formally presented his sword to Admiral Morrison, but instead of surrendering it, he offered it as a symbol of partnership. "Admiral Morrison," Kethtar said, his voice carrying a respect that had been hard-earned. "We challenged humanity because we thought you were weak. We have learned that peace and weakness are not the same thing. You have taught us what true strength looks like." Morrison accepted the sword with equal ceremony. War Marshal. Humanity learned something too. We learned that we never stopped being warriors. We just became the kind of warriors who fight for something instead of against something. As the ceremony concluded and representatives from dozens of species gathered to celebrate the new alliance, Dr. Adams made a final observation in his report to the human government. The Zephyrians asked what humanity becomes when challenged with extinction. The answer is, we become whatever we need to become, without losing sight of what we choose to be. We became warriors again, but we remained builders. We became conquerors, but we remained teachers. We became strong enough to destroy our enemies, and wise enough to turn them into allies instead. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. When pushed to the edge of extinction, humans didn't just survive. They evolved. They adapted. They transformed not just themselves, but everyone around them. And in the end, everyone was stronger for it.